A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So this is not my story. This is my mom's story, but I know it pretty well because she told me it 1,000 times when I was growing up because I always wanted her to tell me about it because it just fascinated me. So when she was in about middle school, her and her family, it was my uncle, her, and my grandparents. They moved into like a new housing development. So they were the first people to live in this house. Nobody had ever lived in this house before. She said that one night they were sitting in the living room, the whole family in the living room, and she got up to go take a shower. She went down the hall, and her room was at the end of the hall, and then if you were like standing in her room facing out into the hall, her brother's room was on the right, bathroom on the left, and then a little further down from the bathroom was her parents' room. So she said she went in her room, she got her clothes, she got everything ready for her shower, she turned, she flipped off the light, and right in front of her, a man walked from her brother's room into her parents' room. And she said he wasn't really walking, he was about like 4 or 5 inches off the ground, wearing one of her shirts. So she flipped the light back on, she looked in her brother's room, nobody there, looked in her parents' room, nobody there, ran out to the living room, everybody's still in the living room, and she told them what she saw, and they were all like, whatever, like, that's crazy. No, you didn't see that. So she also said that that shirt was never missing, it was still in her drawer. She took a shower, whatever. So later on, I don't know how much later, but the next experience, she was in the bathroom brushing her teeth in the morning, and in the mirror she could see her room and her brother's room. And she said that she saw the man again walk out of her brother's room but into her room wearing the same shirt, her shirt. So she went and looked, and there's nobody there. Nobody in her room, nobody in her brother's room, shirt's not missing. She just saw this man again, and again, he was floating about 4 or 5 inches off the floor, not walking, but went from his room to her room. And she saw it out of the mirror. And then, so another time, she said she came home from school, and her brother was home. He was sitting at the kitchen table doing his homework with a gigantic butcher's knife next to him on the table. She's like, what the hell? What are you doing? Like, what is going on? He said that he heard somebody in the house, and he was home alone because it was after school, everybody's at work, whatever. They had an old rocking chair in the living room that the springs popped when you sat down and got out of, so like you could hear if somebody was in there, like sitting in the chair for sure. He said he heard somebody in the living room sit down in the chair and get back up, but nobody else was there at home with him. So another time, so the only person that did not experience anything in that house with that man was my grandpa. So I asked my grandma about it too, because, you know, love the story, wanted her take on it because I've always heard it from my mom. She said that she came home one day from getting groceries, and she was bringing groceries in, and she walked in the front door and looked in the kitchen, and she said she saw this man propped up against the counter, like on his elbows, you know, propped up against the counter with his back to her. And she said she went around the corner to look in the kitchen, and there was nobody there. She was home alone. So the final time that he was seen in the house, my mom had some friends over, and she was going to her room to get her Ouija board to see if they could contact this man or whatever. And she said she was walking down the hall, she walked past her parents' room, and out of the corner of her eye, she saw him sitting on the end of their bed. And they had a water bed, so it was moving, you know, like somebody had just sat down on it. And she stopped, and she backed up again to take another look. Bed was still, nobody was there. And they moved shortly after that, so she said that was the last time she saw him, but she will never forget that, and I will never forget that because it just fascinates me.